Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 5th annual 1455 StoryFest. This session is entitled Arlington Young Poets, The Making of an Anthology. I'm Holly Karapetkova, Poet Laureate of Arlington, Virginia, and recipient of a 2022 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship. We're here today to share with you some poems and some thoughts about youth poetry based on our experiences putting together an anthology of Arlington young poets, Words for the World, which is available online through Day 8's website. The anthology assembles writing by 38 exceptional high school poets from Arlington County, Virginia, responding to a world struck by pandemic tragedy, inequality, and mental health crisis. And the poems and the youth poets in this anthology give me great hope for the future of poetry and the future in general. The project came out of a conversation that Amasa Maleski and I had when they were first appointed Youth Laureate of Arlington during the pandemic in 2020. And we're trying to figure out how to get poetry to young people in our community to help people heal from all of the social isolation and anxiety caused by the pandemic and by life in general in the 21st century. So this project has been a really long time in the planning. We just launched the anthology on May 24th, and we had another really wonderful, successful event on June 13th. It's been really well received in the community. People are really excited to hear from our young poets. I want to thank the people who supported, the organizations who supported this anthology, Arlington Arts and Day 8. Day 8 helped take care of all the technical details and helped us put together this beautiful, beautiful product. And I especially want to thank the Academy of American Poets for the Poets Laureate Fellowship with funding from the Mellon Foundation that really made this project possible. And the Mellon Foundation is the nation's largest supporter for the arts and humanities, seeking to build just communities enriched by meaning and empowered by critical thinking, where ideas and imagination can thrive. And you can find out more about them at mellon.org. You can find out more about the Academy of American Poets at poets.org. And I strongly encourage you to check out the Academy of American Poets website. It's a fantastic resource for teachers and poets with all kinds of amazing materials. I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have with us today my co-editors of the anthology. I'm so excited to hear from these amazing young writers. So I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order, and they're going to read some poems for you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the process of putting together the anthology. Amasa Maleski was named Arlington's inaugural Youth Poet Laureate in 2021. They are a writer just graduating from Washington Liberty High School and headed to UVA in the fall. They're an alum of the University of Virginia's Young Writers Workshop and a 2020 member of the DC Youth Slam team. Their poetry was recognized at the regional level of the 2021, 2022, and 2023 Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. They were an awardee of Luisa Igloria's Young Poets in the Community program, through which they organized and hosted Arlington's first youth open mic for all public high school students. Leon Mason was named Arlington Youth Poetry Ambassador in 2021 and again in 2022. He is also just graduating from Washington Liberty High School, and he's headed to Wesleyan University in the fall. Liam writes abstract poetry in rhythmic form, just as inspired by rappers Danielle DeMille and Billy Woods as he is by poets Bro Willie and E.E. Cummings. Liam's style flails free from any trammels but the grooves of his mind's ear. Kashfi Rahmani was named Youth Poet Laureate of Arlington County in 2022. She's a rising senior at Phillips Academy, Andover High School. And in 2022, she was named a Young Arts finalist in theater and merit winner in spoken word poetry. She's won multiple Scholastic Writing Awards and has been published in Rattle, Brown Girl Magazine, Loudon Community Magazine, Poetry Society of Virginia, SEMA, American Kahani, and Assam News. She's been a member of the Virginia Young Poets in the Community and the DC Youth Slam team, and is vice president of the Poetry Club and head of the literary magazine at her high school. And Kashfi was recently appointed the very first youth laureate of the state of Virginia. So that's really exciting news. So I'm going to turn it over to our young poets now, and they're going to read some poems for you.
All right. As Dr. Karapetkova said, I'm Amasa. And my first poem in the anthology is entitled A Field. There is a field of grass that doesn't pierce or itch. We lie so full of truth, it seeps into the earth. A kiss shares us gentle. We are irreverent as a tumbling azalea bloom. We float above our bodies, not discarded but resting, while you tell me I am beautiful. The both of us believe this to be true as the sunlight. Beneath our sun-soaked spirits, our bodies begin to work, ejecting the shards of mirrors lodged in our soft flesh. The shrapnel hisses to us in silver tongues, approximating the clamor of the jury beyond this field, all sentencing each other to their reflections, sharp pupils aiming at each other's throats. In this field, not every eye must be my student. In fact, there are only 2 eyes here, and they are closed. Above our mending bodies, beneath this unabashed sky, we passion grass stains into our clothes and go blind. Thank you. I think I'm passing it on to Liam.
And here I am. I've caught the path. I'm going to start with my poem For Billy Woods. Used to whittle alabaster with a fold Swiss army. Now the cast recording script cast in Woods gold Sharpie, a foot soldier army man lined up to Armand Hammer's arm, my hand extended, corkscrew in the palm. Horseshoe in my mouth, I misquoted his song, but a sore tooth could espouse that spit holding his harm. So I vomited Lageria all over the leader's vans. We were standing in. His art was my christening mission, his ancient a kinship. I'm mincing, wasn't half as articulate. When I told him I rap, Wood said, I'm listening, gave me the instrument he signed on my chrysalis, and now the ink spills glistening. Woods looked in my eye and said, I'm listening. And now, of course, last but not least, we have Kashfi.
Wow, those were some great poems ahead of time. I did, in fact, get to listen to them already, but I love hearing them again and again. The first poem in the anthology for me is called Finding You. As the ceiling lifts and slopes under a blanket of rehearsed budgeons, the sky domes to an arch of worship. Crushed rose petal ground feels more bloodstained to me, cautious treads as I cower from watchful eyes and proposed peace. I make my rounds. I lift my fingers to their clay, their airbrushed skulls. I always come back to you, Parvati. Hands magnetized in sacrilege as I will your being to spring in me. Branches reaching in my limbs, flowers finally sprouting. When did my roots become worn with deception, Shakti? Your aroma billows in taunting waves. Forces solemn repentance as my beady eyes meet your earthy almonds, quivering lips blend into blackened skin. Illuminated under your ivory. They said you knew when to sit quiet, remained pure and faithful under the gaze of wolfish eyes glazed with lust. They said the forest embraced you as its spirits, a placid picture of meditative perfection for them to feast upon from afar. Parvati, I entered the forest and lost my way, howling and still unearthed. When I finally lift, my hands are cross-hatched with flooring imprints and your echoing whispers, enough to keep me tethered to a promise that moksha will finally be found when I find you. Back to Amasa.
Thank you for your words, Kashfi. I've heard a lot of poems from Kashfi through our time on the DCU Slam team. We were both on that team together, and hearing her poetry over and over and how it evolves throughout time is always such a pleasure. That was all time filler, so I could find my place again. Okay, this is my second poem, Landscape. 1. Morning Prayer. Every morning, he skips stones on his bathroom mirror, hopes for a boyish ripple. Every morning, he searches for a crag in his jawline, whispers a prayer. God, why is this body not yet a mountain? Shouldn't it always have been? His body is of river stones. God, where is my mountain? Always a valley. God, where is my mountain? Soft inversion of towering earth and sloping delta of hips. God, turn me inside out. Many mornings he tries wringing the woman out of him, for rolling hills make no mountain. The mirror charts his topography. Fewer mornings he hangs spring blooms on his body, for flowers make no mountain. The mirror notes his ecology. Every morning he's unsure if his body will be the landscape he's praying for. Every morning he names his dissonance. Tourist eyes devour his whimsical vistas without knowing the earthquakes beneath. Every morning the mirror sees him, mangling his inheritance of God's green one, Mother Earth's Eve one. 2. Evening worship. Beyond his flesh, he is the soil of the mountain, the embrace of the valley, the oscillation of a wind chime. He is so many rivulets of silt, so many of Mother Earth's tresses are his veins inlaid with her kisses. The blustery night gales drive the inertia of his blood. He is more than mass, but motion, 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 behold it. He commands himself to behold it and celebrate. Thank you.
I love your verbs so much. You're the best. All right, let's do, seeing as we're both graduating tomorrow, I'm gonna do my poem, Dustin Hoffman, after that, titular film, basically. Middle finger calloused, had to put the pen down, spittle in the chalice, lose double digits just for trying to keep the 10 down, rigid to the casket, cup runneth out while I wiggle in the salad, sickle in the mallet, reap what you sowed up, kid spinning massive opium, classic spazzing, blast leave riddle in the palace, that made malice sweep to no malice. I was so happy when he clicked the switch back to crack a track labyrinths, no Ariadne. Not lost, just stagnant. Stagnant, stuck, a magnet, rusting, double negative, but not unattractive. Fun as backsman, sad enough, lunch, a lapse in tongue, a gasket, bad bluffs, wrung his passions. Past 6 months in one word, plastics. Back to
I feel like
Cash.
that. Oh, hi.
Has
I
anyone
feel
ever
like that
called you
was
Cash Kashfi? I feel like I just came up with a rap
Cash
name for you.
Cashby.
Yeah.
I've been called Cash Money because my last name is
Yeah.
Ramani. So it's like
Oh my
Ramani.
God.
So I'm like Cash
I'm not
Money,
even
right?
creative, but I'm on to something.
Right. No, you totally are. I actually, I say people, but I came up with that one. So, So yeah. So if I ever decide to like pursue the life, like, I've already got it. Plus also on the theme of rapping, I love that like poem because I feel like it reminds me of like the like middle section and Lose Yourself, like the like rhythm of it. And that's what I was like thinking of. And I was like, oh my gosh. But love it as usual. My second poem is called Period. And like it's about periods. And it's essentially about the fact that like in India, women were kind of restricted from contact with others and still are during their periods because they're considered uncleanly. So they can't really perform household tasks, interact with other family members. And this poem is kind of like a, what's up with that? The first time she watched blood pool on the bathroom floor, her mother makes a spoon of palms and carves out a map. Her words trickle like autumn, coloring her tongue a soft orange to make up for 4 feet of space between them. She squeezes warnings together with shaking hands, nurses her breath to its constant, walks with a purpose she doesn't know, while averting her eyes and locking gaze with wooded panels, covered in layers of grime and guilt. Before passing over the sin-sickened stage, Mother tells her there are rules to follow. Don't poison the men with your gaze. Don't pray outside the discomfort of your prison. Don't touch the holy book, the very same that eliminates your autonomy. Marinate in the darkness of your womanhood. Think about what you've done. Her hair is pulled back and plastic-wrapped hands and enough powder to color her scared white. She trails behind with hallowed hands, watches her life performed by a sterile actor as she dances lifelessly in time from the shadows. But the first time I watched blood pool on the bathroom floor, my mother closes the gap. Her arms wrap around my middle, her fingers swipe at my glistening cheeks, and her left hand is a hammer, ready to appease my itch to hurt the world that had hurt me, and her right is a bottle of glue, prepared to piece together my broken fragments once again, covered in layers of pride and promise. Period isn't a word pressed to the ears, suctioned from the air. Period feels less like a halt and more like a pause, followed by a world that doesn't stop spinning. Instead, my arms still spring with flowers. My hair still whips with oceanic breeze. My body can make mountains move, tides pull, tectonic plates shift, and I still bleed without violence. Amasa.
I love that piece. When I heard it last night, I was like, OMG, body and mountain imagery. Slay. So I'm glad that those poems were kind of next to each other. A brilliant rendition. This is my last piece in the anthology. It's entitled Wish, and I wrote it probably almost exactly a year ago. This is a poem about June. Oh. Wish. The porch is alive and wonderful. Creatures with powdery wings brush past like hurried strangers. Apart from the urban bustle round the lamplight, lightning bugs float, winking to each other across the wide yard. Entire countrysides separate them, yet their secret lightning letters always arrive. I wish I could seduce like lightning bugs do. I would disappear my body and silence my voice for the music of summer night. Let it transform these unsightly segments and deliver me neon dance to my lover. I wish to trade crass grasps and sighs for a gentle beam of yearning. There's a photo of us near the Capitol, against stone the color of powdery night wings, in a corner apart from the street where a parade is bustling. Our necks strain for our lips to meet. We're dwarfed by wide brick, which dons an enameled lapel pin, puffs its chest, imposes. I had no more wishes then. We were alive and wonderful, two bugs kissing in midday, blinking into a blinding June too cloudless to confess our secret summer lightning. A little love poem.
Back with my last of the day. This one's called My Oma. It's about my grandmother. She's Indonesian, so we think of her in Dutch. You know, you do the math. But my Oma. Funky like blue note with the B logo. Ball babas batik bunched below bones. Bonobo brain blows backwards. Both bros breathed breathed backyard. Bees buzz birds bask benefactors. Beam burn but boy breathe better battle. Buff babas boro bunched below bones. Blankets bandage broke bespoke. Clothes, gotta get up, adobo's ready with that ABC sauce. CIA tried to JFK my mom's mom. The second never said it for the montage gone way before the bombs dropped. They hit home and cousin. Thank God the next crop missed home. Dust in a thick tome forgotten. I'll never open the cover. Remember bomb pop after bomb pop. She doesn't. We ate a dozen. Cleared the freezer. Thought it was funny. When she couldn't think, she would laugh. It was comfort. Comfort cools. Cruel conundrums. Can't cry because congestion coats combustion. Cancer came, claimed Columbus. Tough cut, clean, clear, case closed, cutlasses. Can't cleave complex corruption, crutches. Can't carry crack construction. Call, collect, Christmases, climaxed, conniptions, clicked, convulsive check. Context, compulsive, camaraderie, caress, confections, chocolate crisps. I remember better than the screaming fits. Evening sit, deep in cushion, needle hits, sweet percussion, thimble clicks. It really always was the simple things. Reading Tintin, eating out tins, pirouettes. We would spin and the tire swing links untwist. For the last of the
I
day,
feel
back
like-
to Kashfi.
Yay! I feel like that poem scratches like the right itch in my brain. I feel like it's so, I love it. I love it. My last poem of the day is called My Good in a Day. I feel like I know this poem like the back of my hand because I've done it so much and I love it. I like it because I like when you know a poem so well that every so often you'll like catch yourself by surprise when you remember why you wrote it and like what you're talking about because you know it so well. And that happened last night when I was doing it. And it's just such a nice feeling. So Dada in my language means grandmother. So this poem is for my grandmother as well. Oh my gosh, full circle. When the clouds part, my grandmother is on the move. Her locks flap in the wind. She hides the flaps on her skin. She always finds a way to burrow inside herself, to position her limbs in the shadows of the sun. She runs faster each time reality catches up. When India rises from its trout-lipped slumber, her basket is already filled with buds. Jasmine sugarcoats her strained smile. She'll have to fix that by noon, and prepares to string itself to garlands. The dough works its milky color to a lather, scrubbing until a bumpy rash of rose envelops her brown. Not cream. She'll try again tomorrow. At 11, she bustles down flights of stairs, kneading dough until the salt that drips from her face is enough seasoning, until the blood that washes over her hands hides the henna, tinges the dough sindoor colored, so she sweeps a mark across her forehead and prays, clasps her hands together, asks for a new face. When the clock finally chimes 12, she dons 4 tiffins of lunch and wears a crimson sari to wash out the weakness. Her feet are quick, but her husband's are quicker. When he's through, her wavering teeth, more ocean than stronghold, attack their own hands over and recrudescent waves, over and 3 p.m. And she practices teetering spoons on her palms to prepare for the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her daughter-in-law is growing grayer and frailer by the day. Men like little meat on the bones, more cooking for Dada. Her niece, who once painted the solar system on her eyelids, let her planets get lost on Earth. The ones who aren't pretty have to be smart, because Dada can't marry them off right away. And her daughter, who runs at the same time as she does every morning to connect with the life she once knew, shuffles down gated neighborhoods in neon Adidas while Dada turns around to watch for hungry eyes in sandals that peel at the heels. The nightjar sings in tune with her landline. Quiet, subliminal darkness unfolds the cloak of nighttime, but 13,000 miles away, me and my sister are greeting the sun. We prattle about carnivals and tank tops, about new dreams, about opportunities, about our goals and our lives. Dada, when will you come to see us? Soon, Bangaru, soon. And then she tucks herself in with a blanket that steams like rice and dreams her wishes into our realities. Thank you. I think it's to Holly now.
Yeah, you are. Oh my goodness. This is just a small taste of what's in the anthology for our listeners. The poems are absolutely amazing. I love all of those poems that you all read. I feel so honored to have been surrounded by such talent and to have a chance to work with such amazing young writers. I want to start our conversation with a little bit of a discussion about the process of putting the anthology together. And I wondered if you all could talk, and whoever wants to take the question first is fine. What you learned in editing the anthology? What was your favorite part of the process?
I think the same thing, which was my favorite, is also what I learned, I guess, in that there's just so much great youth poetry, and there's so much right where we are, which, you know, I don't know that Arlington has some sort of special once, you know, in a blue moon spring. I think that it's a wonderful thing to learn that everywhere there's just so much poetry sort of brewing and begging to be let out and put somewhere. It was so fantastic to see the amount of applications that we got.
and the amount of fantastic work they're in, and diverse, fascinating work from all kinds of people, all kinds of styles, different approaches. So that was just such a joy to be able to, really experience all this poetry that it was overflowing, from just where we were. And I think that was something wonderful to learn too, that, of course, being engaged with poetry, I knew that there were poets around me, right? But that there was this wonderful volume was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the like pre-release process, my favorite part was getting to discuss this poetry with my fellow editors, and just seeing like that we were discovering merit in all of these poems, and I don't know, just sharing poems with other people, is a lot of like why we do it, right? Is that we get to talk about our favorite works, but to get to talk about people in our community who are our age or younger, our peers, and get to talk about their work on the level that we talk about poets that we admire, I think was just a really amazing exercise in learning. I don't know, just the brilliance in young people, and all that can be learned and admired in art by young artists.
Yeah, honestly, oh my goodness, I love what both of you have said. I think, like, kind of specifically verging off what Liam said, I was really like, I loved and learned from like the surprise of like the diversity of works that we kind of got. Like the volume of submissions was so intense to such a great extent. I was so happy to see some people wanted to have their work featured because they felt confident enough in themselves as poets to put their work out there, which is the hardest part. Like everyone's a great poet, but actually feeling like you can put your work out there because you're proud of what you made is the best part. And there were so many individuals who had done this. And it was so incredible to see that just in our small little county, there were such different styles of poetry, different walks of life, different people with different goals and different audiences. And it was really refreshing because in the past, I've really like felt constrained to like this formulaic type of poetry that I thought I was expected to write, and seeing how like diverse this is, from like this like really rhythmic poetry like Liam's to something more like someone was writing, me and Amasa and Liam were talking about this yesterday, but someone was like writing Shakespearean sonnets, and like I just think it's so cool. I love the diversity of it.
Yeah, awesome. It really is a diverse collection of poems, and it's been really exciting too to see the community's response to all of these young poets at our readings. Everybody is just amazed, blown away by the kind of talent and the the way that young people are just putting their truth out there, right? And again, it's been such an honor and privilege to work with all of you and all the writers in this book. Let's talk a little bit personally. Why do you write poetry? What does it give you?
Better than
For me,
Monopoly?
go ahead, Liam.
No, sorry. That's I stole that from Lou Reed, by the way. I stole that.
Hi. I think for me, I started writing when I was like 6 years old. So it's not entirely like a, oh my goodness, I found writing 2 years ago at this specific place at this specific time. Like it's always been a part of my life. But I'd say poetry specifically, I kind of, like I used to go to DC a lot, and then I went to Busboys and Poets, which is actually where I met Amasa. But it was like, it was so incredible to see these people talking about things that were important. Like, sure, everything's important, but when I was 6 years old, like talking about how like this bug I found outside maybe didn't make as much of an impact as I hoped. But like seeing these people talk about the things that affect them in their daily lives, that affect their people, that affect their communities to such a dire level that they needed it to be said right now. And that was the reason they're performing. And it made me feel so much more validated in the things that I wanted to say, the things that I wanted to change. And poetry really provided like medium for that. And I'm really terrible at channeling my emotion into my words. So being able to do that on paper, being able to perform that, just felt so much stronger in really attesting to what I want to say. That's why I love writing. Please go ahead.
I I said it's better than Monopoly, and I was joking, but I wasn't fully joking. Like, what else is there to do? Think about it. It's no poetry. That's the way I feel about it, you know, in that it's not that it comes naturally. Of course, it's something that takes iteration and it takes strife and, you know, as much love as it takes fury to write poetry. But it's something that it's just a wonderful outlet. It's my favorite outlet. It's something that I can pour myself into and then I can see it blossom. So it's a wonderful activity. It's a fun extracurricular. It's something to do that brings me as much as I give it, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a thing that I do of anything to do. I'll go back to what Kashfi said because I think our poet origin stories are very similar. My 6th grade English teacher introduces all her classes, still does this, still teaches and teaches poetry in her classroom, and introduced me to poetry through spoken word, which is perhaps, I just love her approach in that way because instead of sitting down reading Dickinson or Robert Frost or Shel Silverstein at that age, and is such a different experience than what she did, which was showing us videos online of people doing poetry slams, and then also showing local youth poets, such as, you know, kids on the DCU slam team and other local organizations, because that really gave me something to look up to that was attainable, you know, not necessarily the greats enshrined in many, many anthologies and publications, but rather people who I could grow into. And so that was my mission when I first was introduced to poetry, is I'm going to be a member of the DC Slam team. And I was not the youngest member ever, like I promised myself, but several years later, I did reach that goal. And I got there through, like Kashfi said, going to open mics in the district. In Arlington, we are so lucky to be right next to the vibrant arts community that's located in DC. And so I've benefited a lot from seeing that community and, you know, wanting to participate in it and be a part of it. And so my participation in poetry is kind of a lot like my participation in music. I'm a band kid, and honestly, I don't love to practice. Like the solitary act of writing poetry, a good release, but not my favorite part. My favorite part is I go home and I practice my craft so that I can go out into the group and be a part of a whole. I go home and practice my part so that I can learn everybody else's part. It's something that my middle school band director would tell me. And I think that that's true of poetry as well, as that I was longing to just soak up what other people were doing and then go home and put it into my own poetry and then return back a better poet and connect with people. Because that was the most beautiful part of poetry in DC, was really making those connections and having lines touch other people. So yeah, I write poetry for community.
Awesome. I love hearing your answers to these questions. I started writing poetry when I was in high school too, but it was a very different world then. And we didn't have access to the same kind of communities that you do now, especially with spoken word. And so I love that that is an outlet for so many young people. And I love that poetry is just thriving in so many people's lives. It's awesome. And I love that we have youth laureates too. You all have all been youth laureates, ambassadors. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about your work as youth laureates and ambassadors, what kinds of things, projects you've been involved with, and also how has serving in a public position changed your perspective on poetry?
Okay, Kashvi, I'm relegating you to go last, because you have the most expansive experience right now. So my tenure as Youth Poet Laureate in Arlington really forced me to confront, having a megaphone. That's kind of what I was handed with that title, was amplification of my voice. And I had not had that to that extent before, ever. And I immediately had to confront, like, well, what do I want to say? And it, when you're a poet, it kind of seems obvious because you say things all the time. But I was only doing it to crowds of strangers, to my English teachers, to my writing friends. And I never considered, if my county, if my immediate community was listening, what do I need to say? And so I had my position during a kind of weird time. It was 2021, so it was like right at the end of the pandemic. And so I was kind of limited in my capacity to do community events. But so that June, I held a weekly writing workshop that was that featured all like queer poets as poem examples. And so that was really great because it was kind of a small start, just like going to my local library or virtually contacting my local library. It was not actually in the library, but associated with the library. And that was powerful, just seeing like, just interacting with individual youth in my community was an impact. Like the feedback from that event was that it was just good that outlet was there and that I was sharing this craft with other people. And then I realized, my thing to share can also just be introducing poetry and learning my craft better by teaching it. And so I then went on to host a panel for Outright, which is DC's LGBTQ literary fest, which goes on in August. And so that virtual panel hosted some of my friends that I'd met just from around the country, really, who are queer youth poets. And I got to talk to them about what their work speaks to and what they're doing in their community and change that they want to see in that in their communities and in the country. And that was really awesome because I just got to moderate that and like lend the megaphone to voices that really had something to say. And then so that was my tenure. Technically there were some other things within that, but then my baby of a project was Audacity, which was the open mic that Dr. Karapetkova mentioned earlier. And I really loved that because that was also very community based, and it was all people that I knew who lived in Arlington and got to share their work on a high school stage, and that was amazing to see. And I like made that event from like start to finish, like from concept to securing that space, to finding those features, which were my friends on the DC Slam team. Kashfi featured at that event. And so that was another event that I was very happy went through because it was so localized, because a lot of the infrastructure when I came into my position was centered around DC because there had never been an Arlington laureate before. And so I was glad to just build connections and infrastructure for poetry specifically in Arlington that was very Arlington based.
I want to first and foremost just give the most loving shout out to Words Beats in Life, the nonprofit org that has granted us so many of our lovely titles, which now adorn the inside cover of this book and pad out our lengthy, artist bios. but they're the best. Words Beats in Life is the greatest. I've worked with them, under them, by them, for them since 2020 now. And what they've done for, of course, the city, the community, the tri-state area, but specifically for me has been immense and incredible. Since you guys didn't really get my poetry origin story, I'll give it in brief. I've been writing since I was like 13, whatever, but I didn't really think of myself as a poet until I confronted Words Beats in Life, this fantastic organization, and they presented me the opportunity to become something, to become a laureate or an ambassador. And before, I had just been, stuffing my writing away in a Google Doc that, collected dust. But when I applied for this position, when I put myself out there, it completely lifted me into a new place. Not just that I had this title now that afforded me whatever, because it's not like when you get the title poetry ambassador, they don't, you don't get licensed to kill. I'm not like an ambassador in another, I can't like, do anything. I have no extrajudicial powers. It's just that personally, I was imbued with this spirit that I could really affect myself, the people around me, with my poetry, And so I adore them for that. And I adore the opportunity and the ability that it gave me, which was just to continue to write and do it as passionately and as seriously as I have in the last couple of years since I sort of fell into that position during the peak of Corona. I very much fell into that position, and it very much was the peak of Corona. So I basically applied for this position. I became an ambassador of youth poetry, and I did it at a time where people weren't even going outside to read poetry. So we had, slams, and we had presentations and showcases on Zoom like this one. This has been the first little Zoom showcase that I've done in a while, and it's bringing me back. They're very fond, not to have too fond memories about those times, but those were fond memories that organization, Words Beats in Life, really afforded me as the poetry ambassador to connect with people in such a disconnected time. And I'm very grateful for that. I think that's something that I hope to continue, because while we are now able to be face to face, it's not that we're all completely connected, you know what I mean? There's still plenty of disconnect. And I think being able to bridge that with writing is something that is so fantastic. And I'm so glad that I have been sort of gifted this opportunity to do so by Words Beats in Life. So huge shout out to them and everything they've done, because I wouldn't be right here. I would not be in this Zoom meeting, certainly. I would still be in bed if not for them.
Kashfi, you're muted. Or I can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
So maybe we'll go on to our next question. Like, Kashfi, maybe you can play around with your sound and see if you can figure out what's going on. And yeah, I can't hear you. We'll go on to our next question, which is kind of connected really with what you all have been talking about. What role do you think poetry can play in the lives of young people, and what kinds of things do you see young people turning to poetry for?
I'm so sorry, Kashfi. What did I say about fondness for Zoom meetings? I cursed this, but I think that really the role of poetry in the life of a young person, I think that poetry is one of those things that I think truly everybody has the capacity for. Is everybody going to find it as their sole, number one creative outlet? Absolutely not. Not everything's for everyone, right? But I think that the beauty of poetry is that it's so completely open and it's so completely inviting, even though, there's this perception that it's a little bit closed off somehow. I think that it's something that really does accept anyone with any style and any idea. And I think that playing that role as something that, you know, we've heard so much talk today about the beauty that poetry has in its fantastic ability to connect and to form community. And I think that to be able to find community in creative output, in writing, in speaking, is something that is so valuable and so fantastic. And so that I think that it should at least play somewhat of a role. You know, we you know, Amasa said and Kashfi said that they were both introduced to poetry effectively through a teacher. I had that experience somewhat, but it wasn't in the same exact way. I think that every teacher should be introduced. You know, obviously it's not up to each individual teacher, but I think that poetry is something that should be presented to all young people as an opportunity and as an invitation, because I think that it's something that can give so much. So just it as an ability, I think, should be afforded to everybody, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Liam said it all. I'm not adding on.
Great. Well, hopefully Kashfi is going to come back and be able to join in the conversation. But just our final question, what do you all hope for the future of poetry?
Ooh. I think I hope for, well, like Liam was saying, accessibility for poetry, of course. I don't know what that looks like. Because in my mind, it just looks like every kid has my 6th grade English teacher. Or, you know, that everybody has that literary arts teacher in their life, to tell them that their words and thoughts mean something, even if they are STEM inclined or social science inclined. That, you know, I've seen people of such broad interest still write poetry, and even within the literary community, people who have a fondness for prose, for long form fiction, you know, high fantasy and sci-fi, that they can all participate in poetry and really enjoy that. I know just right in the anthology, one of my friends who is a wonderful fantasy writer, he has poems in there and they're beautiful, and I know he enjoyed writing them because poetry is such an accessible form to people. Also, oh, the future. Okay, Liam, you take it. I'm out of ideas.
Yeah. I'm going to preface the little diatribe I'm about to drop with the fact that this might be completely not true, and it, I admit, is certainly rose-tinted and bleary-eyed sort of false nostalgia. But in my head, at least, there was a time where it was not only cool, but a given that every artist was a poet, basically. You know, Patti Smith at the same time as Basquiat were both poets, at the same time as every writer for Interview Mag, at the same time as the entire New Yorican movement coming out of the beat movement, leading into the slam movement. There was just an understanding that if you were an artist, you were probably a poet too. And that was sick. That was cool. That was wonderful. And I hope for that. I hope for that, certainly. It might be a utopian dream, but the idea that everybody feels fantastic in writing poetry. I think that the biggest hurdle, because poetry is so open, is that start, is that idea that, yeah, I'm a poet. I'm someone that can write poetry. What I'm writing is poetry. Like I said, I think it's very evident in what I write that it comes from a musical place. And it's because it does come from a musical place. I didn't view myself as a poet in the beginning. And when I was able to, when I was confident in viewing myself as a poet, you know, doors flew open. People invited me with open arms, and the medium invited me just the same, you know? So I think my great hope is that everybody is fully confident in seeing themselves as a poet, whether they want to write poetry or not. You know, it should be something that isn't just acceptable, but it's cool. You know, poetry's cool, man. dude, it's dope. I like poetry. And it should be something that everyone is able to feel cool in writing, whether it's, it shouldn't have to be your identity or your sole output, but somebody that's doing anything else, I think will be aided. It brings something to you. Certainly. I've said that like however many times over this short conversation. If you're doing STEM, like you said, Amasa, or if you're doing history, or if you're a trumpet player, or if you're a tap dancer, whatever you are, if you paint walls and that's your passion, I think that writing a poem every once in a while will help you out. It'll be cathartic. It'll provide you, a new community and a new place to go, both creatively and literally. So I hope that everybody is able to feel themselves in writing poetry and, enter that community, because the community is very inviting. I think it's something that is pretty much on the individual level of, how can we connect as poetry with every single person to say, no, you can be a poet. It's a good thing. It's something that you'll enjoy. I think that's my great hope, is that everybody can find themselves in that position where they're confidently writing poetry as poetry for themselves and then eventually others.
I love that idea. That's awesome. Kashfi, you made it back. Do you have audio now? I want to see if we can give Kashfi a last word.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay, I'm so sorry we lost you, Kashfi, but we got a lot of great input from you. And we got to hear your poems, which is such a treat. I'm going to wrap us up now. So we'll just say thank you so much for joining us for Arlington Young Poets, the making of an anthology. Be sure to check out the other sessions at 1455 StoryFest, and we hope to see you next year.